This episode of Church Advance is sponsored by ServeHQ.Church. If you're a church leader, you know how tough it is to train and equip volunteers effectively. Between busy schedules, last minute cancellations, and the need for consistent training, it can feel pretty overwhelming. And that's where ServeHQ comes in. ServeHQ provides on demand video training, automated follow ups, and a simple, scalable way to equip your team all in one place. No more chasing people down or worrying about gaps in training. Get your team trained faster and more effectively so you can focus on ministry, not micromanaging. Check them out at www.servehq.church. That's www.servehq.church.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Church Advance podcast. I'm so excited on this episode today that you get to listen in to an exciting conversation with my producer, Luke Clayton, and a special guest. I so appreciate Luke's love for the church, Luke's love for pastors, and his unique insight into church media and other related topics. And so I know you're going to enjoy this episode. We look forward to being back with you very, very soon on the Church Advance podcast.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, when you guys had old Brian Free on last time, I was like, man, that's a little I grew up listening.
Did you really?
He was one of the I guess he'd be one of the first groups that I like, Southern gospel groups I started listening. So
really,
I grew up in a real again, and I don't say this in like a sense of like, I'm not like, what do they call them? The recovering fundamentalist.
Yeah.
Nothing against anybody, but
no,
like, I don't identify as someone who's like, oh man, I've been bruised and scarred. Like, I don't know. It's just, I've loved my life. It's been great.
Yes.
But I grew up kind of in a very conservative Baptist church. Music was very traditional. I mean, hymns and, you know, a choir, and honestly, I'll give them this: they did and still do that very well.
Yep.
All that to say, though, my mom in particular had some really. She went to Bob Jones, so that might tell you a little bit about like what her philosophy of music was.
Yeah.
So like, I actually stumbled across like it's like remember the old CD cases?
Yes.
Or like, you know, you'd keep the actual like physical discs in there.
Yes.
Well, I stumbled across one of those at my grandparents' house, and they had a bunch of Southern gospel albums or like CDs in there. And so Greater Vision was like my first, like, that was dipping my toe into the Southern gospel world, you know? And then Brian Free, though, came along pretty quickly afterwards. And so I Believe God, man, that was like,
oh my goodness,
that was my jam.
Yeah.
You know, that whole album really. So all that to say, you had old Brian on, and I was like, oh man, that's cool. That's cool. I enjoyed editing that one.
Oh yeah. That was a great. They're just great guys, and so they're easy to talk to, and they're just very down to earth, and they've obviously done it a long time. And so like I said, that recording was kind of like right in the middle of a concert, and so that was kind of why we were rushing out, and it was a very interesting time to do it. But we thought, hey, we have like 45 minutes here. Let's try to squeeze in a podcast, and so I think it went well. We want to do it again where we have a little bit more time to get into some more things with them. But they're fantastic guys, man, for sure.
Well, that's good. Well, you've had some good guests, and so I've enjoyed editing. But man, I will say too, like, guests are great, but it's really good to have a balance of just y'all, you know, like just the four of you. And so the you know, the just having that dynamic of you guys interacting, and like, you're obviously like siblings, and I think I enjoy it. I get a kick out of it half the time, you know, just hearing you guys, like, a little bit of banter and all that. It's pretty good. It's pretty solid.
We should probably be more careful with how we do it and how much we do it, and how but it's just natural. It really is. Maybe that's
I mean, I was gonna say, I think I think because it's all done, and I mean, it's just and by it's not like I'm hesitating to use the term sibling rivalry, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the typical, like, hey, when you're siblings, you're comfortable with each other, you just joke with each other, you
Yeah.
mess with each other. None of it ever seems rude
Yeah.
or
I hope not.
hostile or no, absolutely
Because
not.
we can be
No.
pretty ruthless with each other.
I'm sure. Yeah, just when the mics are off, the claws
Yes.
come out.
Yes.
But yeah. Well, yeah. So let's just, kind of like I said, just as we get into the conversation more, man, I'd love to hear, and I know I've heard some of it, over the years, or over the past, because Keith, like it's been about almost, has it been like a year and a half, 2 years since we
Yeah,
started?
it has. It's been
It's
2 years because
2 years. Yeah.
I remember going in 2023 to meet you there in Murfreesboro, I guess.
Uh huh.
Me and Chris, and we went just to eat lunch. Brian had kind of
Yep.
set up the connection between us and you,
Hmm.
and Brian Sams, that is. And yeah, that was 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
pretty wild to see where it's all gone. And we're thankful again, as we say just about every episode. I hope we do, for your work. I mean, for everything that you do. And we could not be doing what we do without you. You have the job of having to stress to make sure we get these files to you and to make sure we have our episodes done. And I promise you, I'm sure we're the worst ones of all of your clients that you work with to get all this stuff done and work. And so I apologize, because I always do, but that's just the truth.
No,
But
no need for apologies. It's all good. It's all worked out. We always seem to, make it happen.
yes,
What's funny is I have, I'm in the, I guess, call it the creative industry, because I produce creative content, videos, podcasts, designs, things like that. And I've worked with a lot of creative people over the years. So, different graphic designers, different videographers, and now, working with musical artists, vocal artists, whatever you guys call yourselves. And yeah, I mean, when you work with that, there's that, you creative people are very gifted being creative, but you also tend to be really creative with your deadlines and with your schedules and
yes,
with things like that. Like,
yes.
deadlines or due dates are suggestions, and they could be creatively, moved around and things like that. So,
That's
but
true.
Keith, I actually know enough from you that you're a
Yep.
little more like business minded, I guess. I think we'll blame the siblings for the over creativity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Christopher. We'll point him out. Christopher is the most brilliant one of all of us. He really is, and it's kind of what you're referring to. He's the most brilliant one of us all when it comes to his creativity, with artistry, with vocal stylings, with music, just music technique, with musical production, composition, everything. Christopher's the one, but he is exactly what you were just describing. It's very hard for him to meet deadlines, to understand deadlines, and to cooperate with the partners and people that we have around our ministry to get things to them in the time, in the deadline. So yeah, it's very difficult, but I try to do the best. The biggest thing with us is every day is different for us. All the logistical situations that we're in, every day is different. Every church is different. Every pastor is different. Every promoter is different. Every mile is different. Every travel
mm,
situation, routing is different, and we're having to juggle all that stuff and also meet deadlines. And that is no excuse. We do need to be better than where we are, but it is a lot. It's an undertaking, and when you're dealing with, well, again, like you said, I guess I would be the person that most emphasizes deadlines and emphasizes things that we have to do. Still, even with all that, I do understand, how crazy our lifestyle is, and how we have to, because I'm naturally a people pleaser. Also, I want
mhm.
everybody to be happy and satisfied, and so it's hard. Sometimes that's a difficult thing for me, because I tend to say yes too many times, and I
Yeah.
tend to say yes, I can do that, absolutely, too many times. And so I have to battle with that myself. Um, And so that's what I'm struggling with. Is this a is it are we in a session? Are you my psychologist? Is that what this is?
Yeah, this is
That's
therapy,
good.
and
That's good.
yeah, I'll
I think
send you a bill.
I'm getting these flavors. That would be good though. That I need
Yeah.
it. I need it. That's good. I'm glad this has turned into that.
Well, speaking of the psychology of it all, I actually can't wrap my mind around the lifestyle like you referred to that guys like you are living. Like you're right. Like no day looks the same, no week looks the same. I mean, your weekends are probably pretty consistent. It's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be traveling, we're gonna be singing at a church or at an event or something like that. But I can't imagine. I am a creature of habit and routine. I mean, so I moved to a new house, same town, new house back in August, and man, it took me. I felt completely off my game for a good month because it was like just a small change like that. It's like, well, now my routine's different. Like for example, like the gym I would get up and go to. Well, now it's like, it'd take me a good 30 minutes to get there now, where it used to take 10. And what am I going to do about that? The coffee shop I used to go to it's further away too. So anyways, all that to say, I had to reestablish routine. So I could not imagine like every single week and even day, like you said, look at different. I mean, seriously, how do you survive?
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're not. Sometimes I feel like we're dying slowly and painfully. But
Well, the morbid truth, Keith, is we all are. I
yeah,
mean,
that's true.
so
That's true.
sorry, sorry,
But
listeners.
like last night, like we had a service in Houston. We finished a Bible conference and we left North Houston at 9:30. Got home at 1:30. No, I'm sorry. I got home at 2 o'clock because we had to stop for fuel. And even after that, and here's another problem that I have as we're in this therapy session.
Yeah.
The first thing that I do after every trip, it doesn't matter what time of night or day, I'm unpacking everything. Like I can't go to sleep knowing that my suitcase is just sitting in the corner and there are
Wow.
things in that suitcase. And so it's worse on like nights like last night because we arrive at home at 2 a.m. and I've been gone for 3 weeks. And with the exception of 2 days, I had 48 hours there where I was home and I was literally just washing clothes and being with my wife and my son. And so I had 3 weeks away, gone, and I got home last night, and so I had many bags that were packed with different things, different weather I was dealing with, and I unpacked everything. And so 4 a.m. comes around, and I'm going to sleep. I'm laying down. I take a shower, I unpack everything, I'm going to sleep. So that's a normal thing,
Wow.
and I don't know, Luke. I know we have a lot of people that ask that. How do you do what we do? I don't know. It's so natural. It's something we've literally always done. I've never been to public school in my life. The only time I go to public school is when I'm substitute teaching on the side. That's the only time I've ever gone into a public school.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, man. It'd be weird, to do something else. And who knows?
Uh-huh.
Maybe it happens. Who know? Um, we don't know what the future holds, but man, it's just what we do, and
Yeah.
we thank God for giving us energy, for giving us health, to continue on and to do what He's called us to do.
Yeah, no, and it's awesome, and I admire it because I mean, what you guys do is so, I mean, helpful. So that we could say, which by the way, before I get off on, I do find it funny that you unpack everything because actually I'm the complete opposite because I don't travel. I travel 3, 4 times a year, if that. So I'll literally get home and I just put my suitcase to the
Oh,
side and
ugh.
it it's gonna sit there for a while. Keith. I'm gonna be straight up
That's
with
my
you.
wife. My
Yeah.
wife is the same way, and it's the same thing. She's a school teacher. She's a special ed teacher here in our hometown, and she doesn't travel, but maybe 2 weeks in the summer, and then in spring break, what we were just experiencing. So she will take weeks before, and her suitcase right now is in my house, laying in our bedroom. Saying what you're just saying, like I don't know how she does it. Like I
Yeah.
said, I don't sit down before getting home without unpacking everything.
Yeah.
Hang
No,
up
I
clothes. everything.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, my suit now. Yes. So also last August, I also got married, and so
Yes, you
my
did.
wife won't allow that to happen now. But before, yeah, I would. My suitcase would I just throw it in the closet, and then it's like, oh man, you know what? For whatever reason, something dawns on me, and I'm like, where's that pair of pants, or
I'll tell you
where's
how
that
bad I
shirt?
am, Luke. I'll tell you how bad I am, Luke. I will come to your house and I will unpack your suitcase. I'll unpack your suitcase.
Well, hey, you're welcome anytime. We'll have you. Oh goodness, but getting back to what we're saying was, so what you guys do, and that you're traveling, you're singing, you're ministering really a lot to. I mean, how much percentage wise would you say your audience is churches? I mean, I know you do beyond just churches, you do other things, but I would think that quite a bit of what you do is actually singing at churches, right?
Yeah, I would say 80% is
Okay.
what I would say when it comes to just being in the local church. We do different concert halls, venues, arenas, event centers, performing arts centers. We do those things from time to time, but I would say the vast majority would
Yeah.
be local church. That's where our heart is. That's where we're
Hmm.
raised, and so that's where we want to serve and minister. And we appreciate every platform that God has given us, but that's where our heart is in the
Yeah.
local
Yeah.
church.
Well, and I'll just say this, and Keith, you can also pay me a little extra for this plug here as well. Therapy is the bill's adding up.
And I'm
No,
telling
but in all seriousness,
you.
I got to see you guys perform live. It was last February, I believe, for the first time, and we were there at Brian's church, Brian Sam's church there in Jacksonville, and he's got I would say a mid-size auditorium. It's not tiny, it's not
Yeah.
huge. You guys, though, the way you guys perform. First of all, obviously, your the music is Christ honoring and powerful in and of itself. But the way you guys harness the visuals, and the way you guys like, I mean, again, there's maybe a crowd of 200, maybe a little bit more, give or take. But you guys act like you're singing for thousands of people, and the energy that you give to your performances and to this worship experience is incredibly powerful. And I mean, so I feel like that could be kind of a topic we talk on in and of itself is, you know, how do you make that happen? Like, it's another thing. Like, here you are traveling week to week and you're recreating a similar experience, seemingly regardless of what venue that you're in. So, how do you make that happen?
Man, we really don't, and I don't want to over spiritualize everything, but it's just the case. We want to have every experience a worshipful experience. We know that every service is going to be different. Every single night, every single church service is going to be different. We come in with the same mindset of just drawing people closer to Christ, but ultimately just lifting Him up
Mm,
and just magnifying the name of Jesus and worshiping, and that is every night. So
mm,
if we've learned, if we can come in with that mindset of knowing that everything that we desire to happen in this service tonight would honor and glorify Christ. If that happens, that really is kind of the base of where our heart is and where our soul is. And so it doesn't matter the amount of people, and it doesn't matter the amount of how big the church is or whatever happens. We want God to be glorified, and whatever happens after that is it happens, because that's
mhm.
our main goal. We don't want to be as much Christian artists as we want to be just worshipers and leading
Yeah,
people into the throne room of God and worshiping. So
yeah.
that's what regardless of where we are and how big the stage, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, well, you certainly do it well. Again, this is based off of the one time I've been able to actually be at a venue where you guys were performing live. Now I do technically. That's just because I get fascinated by this stuff. You guys like usually you're performing with like your lyrics videos, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's applicable these days. Of course, it's applicable in many, many places. It's more often than not that we have that ability. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that brings just a dynamic to the again, because this is again, I do the creative work and things like that. So I guess I have an extra appreciation for it. But even for just kind of the average layman, whatever you want to call them, like when you can have obviously what you're hearing connected with what you're seeing, and all those visual enhancements. It really does. It's just kind of like a cherry on top type of thing, icing on the cake. It's done really well, and you guys do a really good job. So again, I can't recommend, if you haven't seen the Erwins perform, or if you need to find him out or have him in, give Keith a call and get him booked. But yeah, let's.
Hey friends, I want to take this opportunity and invite you to join me and Dr. H.B. Charles Jr. in Israel. We are so excited to be teaming up on this adventure with Land of the Bible Tours in an exciting journey to the land of Jesus. There, for 11 days, December 1 through 11, 2025, you will be able to experience the sights and sounds of Israel, walk where Jesus walked, hear some fascinating historical and archaeological material from professionals, and then at each biblical site, you will hear teaching and preaching from myself and HB. And then in the evenings, when we go back to the hotels for rest, we're looking forward to discussing the Bible and its archaeology and how it impacts our expository preaching. I hope you'll take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to Israel with myself, Dr. H.B. Charles Jr., and the wonderful people at Land of the Bible Tours. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions, and you can see the link to the registration in the show notes. May God bless you as you consider this great opportunity.
So let's kind of learn a little bit about why you guys do this, when this all started. I've heard some version of the story before, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again, and then obviously sharing it for everybody else out there.
Yeah, so Dad started this ministry 50 years ago. He was a single evangelist for 17 and a half years. He was called to preach at age 20 and didn't get married till he was 38. And so just lived with his parents, my grandparents, for accountability's sake, and just went all over the country. It's fun whenever we're around his because we still serve with a lot of his old college buddies at Criswell. He went to Criswell College. He was raised at First Baptist Dallas, and they always, they joke with him because he was preaching revivals and singing all through college, when a lot of his peers were just doing college and just studying and everything, and they were. And even he said that some of his friends said that some of the other peers would say, "Man, I can't believe that Dennis Erwin, he's preaching throughout college, and he just needs to pay attention to college." And honestly, we don't say this in any joy. Some of those people are not preaching anymore, but Dad has stayed faithful and remained faithful. And because he's always just rolled his sleeves up and just preached and hit the roads. And we want to believe that a lot of those things, those work ethics, as far as our ministries, passed down to us, because we've seen it, man. We've seen him work when it's not easy, and serve when it's not easy, and minister when it's not easy, and that's just what he does. And so, like I said, did it by himself. He traveled with his stepmom for a while. She sang some harmonies with him. He plays the guitar upside down and backwards. So he is a left-handed individual and had to learn how to play the guitar. He didn't own a guitar. His neighbor had a right-handed guitar. So he just flipped over a right-handed guitar and he strums up like this, and it's a very unique thing.
I have known one other person to do that. Same
Really?
reason. For whatever reason, they were left-handed, couldn't get a hold of a left-handed guitar, and they learned how to play it back. So that's it's fascinating.
So he would sing a few songs every night and then preach, and he literally thought if he was here, he would tell you that he thought God was just going to have him be a single evangelist and his whole ministry. And he met our mom in a tent revival in Mesquite, Texas. And he did something he had never done before that night. At 37, he asked for her phone number. Wow. He said he had never done that before. And here's the funniest part about that, my favorite part of the story, is he never called her. He never reached out. He asked for her number, never reached out. 2 weeks later, long story short, Mom's church was having a revival. The evangelist that was supposed to be there got sick, could not make the meeting. And Mom's pastor called Dad. And Mom had no clue about any of this. And Dad came to do the revival, to preach the revival, sing and preach the revival. And that's kind of how they connected again. Wow. And so I guess they thought they would never see each other after that tent revival. And then they see each other a couple weeks later in the revival, and kind of the rest is history. They get married a year later, and I come along a year and a half later, and Cody, and then Chris, and then Katie, and of course, Dad said, I've been by myself for so many years. I don't want to just leave my wife at home. And so she
Mhm.
jumped on the road with him, and that's literally how kind of where we are now. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah.
all we've ever done is singing. That we sang a lot when we were kids. I was in the recording studio for the first time when I was 16 months old,
Oh,
singing the
wow.
Bible, and then I've got a solo record at 5 years old. Because my thing was every church I went to, I would find a friend because that was my childhood. I didn't have a normal child. I didn't go to school like normal kids do at public school. Like my friends were on the road all over the
Mm.
place. And so like they would say when I was 4 or 5 years old that when I left the church, I said, man, Johnny's my best friend. Or I would say, hey, Blake's my best friend. That's my best friend. And so we made a record when I was 5 that it said songs for my best friends.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was just kid songs and songs that I loved singing at the time. And it's a record that I would never sell to anyone, and I would hardly ever give to anybody. But I still have it, and it's made some great memories, especially now that my son is 4, and we're playing that record for him, and he's listening to his daddy sing, and so that's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah, it's been a crazy lifestyle, and I wouldn't take anything for it. Like you said,
Yeah.
with how you were raised, we were raised in church about every night of our lives. The first 12 to 15 years of my life, um, we were still doing so many revivals, in the fact that we would do um, 45 to 48 Sunday through Wednesday, sometimes Sunday through Friday revival meetings a year. And
Mm.
so we would have 10 to 12 week spans where we were not home. And so
Wow.
that was back when we were in a van and a trailer. And at one point, my mom had a 3-year old, a 2-year old, and a newborn living out of suitcases for 10 to 12 weeks at a time.
Wow.
So you've heard of Superman and Superwoman. Well, that's kind of what my mom was. I don't know how, now that I have a 4-year-old son and I've seen my nieces grow up, to imagine the lifestyle that we have. And it was a little different then. Of course, we would be at one place for 3 or 4 days, but still just being away from home, living out of a suitcase, living in hotel rooms and people's homes that they would open their home up for us. I mean, for 10 to 12 weeks a year at a time,
Mm.
with a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old. I don't know how. I don't know
Wow.
how she didn't. I don't know. I don't know. It was just crazy.
That is,
And of course now our lifestyle is kind of hybrided a little bit away from that. We still do some Bible conferences. Like I said, we just finished one last night. We probably do literally a handful of them a year now. But how it's not just Dennis and the kids anymore. It's Dennis and the kids and their kids. So
mm.
our life, our financially, it's more difficult now to be in one place for 4 days.
Mm.
And so now we're doing a lot more revivals. No, I'm sorry, a lot more concerts, a lot more times where we're at one place for one night, and then we're moving on to the next place and the next place. So the logistics have gotten a little crazier, but that's just simply what we have to do to provide for our families.
Yeah.
And so we've always tried to walk the line between faith and common sense when it comes to having to put food on our table. And
Yeah.
so we know that God has given us common sense, but also we know that we will not make a decision without faith, without knowing that God will supply every need that we have. May not be exactly how we think, and man, we've stressed over it sometimes, but God has always watched over us and kept us fed and kept a roof over our head, and we're just thankful for what He's done through us and in us, and as we go on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it is when you think about, like you said, logistics and the finances and everything of what you guys do. I mean, it's quite an operation. And the fact that, I mean, there are what well, no, because you're married and your sister's married, your one brother's married, so there's families there. So yeah, you're supporting multiple families
Yes,
through
sir.
this ministry, and that is, yeah, and that, I mean, I like that you said there's that balance of common sense and faith,
Mm.
but it takes faith if you're going to
Yep.
do this work. I mean, I've even found it's nothing to the degree of what you guys are doing, but I work primarily with churches and ministries. I mean, I don't work. I have worked with like other maybe small local businesses just here and there, but yeah, I'm kind of like you guys in that I feel called to serve the church primarily. And the church world, when it comes to financially, it's not the same as other industries, which is why, I this is a total rabbit trail, but I used to, one of the negative things I did hear growing up when it talked about like Christian artists is, people would say, oh, they're just in it for the money. And now looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, if they were in for the money, they would just drop the Christian part and just be
Yep.
musical artists, I mean, and that's what I admire about people is there are people out there that are talented enough. They're Christian artists. They're talented enough to do whatever they want, but they choose to stay in that world.
Yeah.
And I think that is admirable. And I do think like I said, what you guys are a great example of what you're adding, the value you're adding to churches, to Christians through performing these live worship concerts is incredibly powerful. And to some degree, I feel like what you guys are able to bring to the table for certain churches, it's like, wow, they're not used to that, that level of kind of worship experience, maybe on a regular basis. And so I think what you guys do is very, very powerful and very helpful and edifying to Christians and churches everywhere.
Let me tell you this. Let me just say, if there is literally no such thing as a Christian ministry that is doing it for the money. There's no such thing. There may be some there. Now, I'm not dismissing the fact that there may be people with the wrong motives that do this, but I promise you, there are not there. It's impossible to do it in this genre, in this life, to do it for the money. It's impossible. You would be the dumbest person of all time if you're doing what we're doing for the money.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like I said, there's such a thing as bad motives, but you can't do this what we do for the money. It's impossible. So I laugh when I hear people say that. And like I said, they probably mean something else by saying something that may be wrong. They may not be wrong. I mean, obviously they're bad people. They're people that do things for the wrong motives, but it would not be for financial gain for this. So.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, you could say there certainly are pastors that are in it for the wrong motivations, but we'd like to think at least that's probably the like a very small minority.
Yes.
And I would say the same with what you guys are doing. So, so you guys, this again, just another random question. So is there a state that you've not been to? Have you been to every single state in these United States?
No, sir. North Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. Yeah, we've done that one. Yeah, that's it. How many ever I just named?
Okay, so this is a call.
That area.
Yeah, if you're a pastor of church out there and you live in one of those states, come on, help us out.
Let's do it.
Let's make it happen. So you've been to Hawaii then?
No. I've not been to Hawaii. I've not been to Hawaii.
Now we got all right. Yeah. So we were Alaska.
No, I guess you're right. Yeah, I've not been to Alaska.
So we got 2 more to add to that list.
Yes, we do.
And then what have you guys? What's the furthest maybe you've been internationally? Canada, Mexico, maybe UK.
Both Canada and Mexico would be the furthest. We've done a couple of different islands. Of course, we minister on cruises every year, and so we go like St. Martin and like the Caribbean. We do the Caribbean, but we've done a lot of concerts in Canada. Of course, pre-2020, we haven't been since 2020, but we have done a few in Canada, and then Mexico, and then in the Caribbean. So, but we would love. In fact, it's been kind of an interesting thing that keeps coming up in our conversations. We would love to do more mission work when it comes to foreign mission work. We got to have a heart to do that, and so I don't know how it would work, because we have a budget we have to meet, to make sure everything's there. But I know that we wouldn't be the only first ones to do that. There's all different kind of fundraising and different kind of sponsorships that could be available for that. So we're praying about that. To be honest, we'd love to do some kind of foreign work, and I don't know how exactly that would look, but we would love to do it.
Oh, well, that would be awesome. And in all your travels, you've met probably a lot of, like we talked about Brian Free. You've met, I think you were at a Gaither homecoming here recently. I can't remember, did you get to meet like Bill Gaither at that?
Yeah, we did. That was a tremendous day. It was a lot of heroes in one room, and it was our first time to be a part of something like that. Of course, we've watched those Gaither homecoming videos our whole lives, and so um, we knew it was going to be great. We didn't know how good it was going to be. It was really
Sure.
just fantastic. It was
Yeah.
just a great spirit in the room all day long, and I think what was so inspiring was that Bill Gaither, who is, and I'm going to get his age wrong, he's in his upper 80s, pushing 90. He's been doing it a very long time, but he was the first person in that room and the last person to leave. And
Wow.
he would have been there. He would have still been there. Like he
Wow.
just loved. He still has such a drive and a passion for what he does. That was
Hmm.
inspiring. It really was. It
Hmm.
was inspiring to see a person like that who has done that for so many years and written so many incredible songs, and to have that same drive and passion at that age and where he's at in his life, because he doesn't have to. He could just, we could never see Bill again and he would be, okay. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so
Yeah.
to see him have that same passion was really just truly inspiring, and it was a tremendous opportunity to do that day.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really awesome. So this is a question that you were so gracious. I guess it was last spring, so almost a year ago. You had me on you guys' podcast. So what an opportunity. And I remember this is the question you asked me. So I'm gonna flip it on you. You said, "What are your Mount Rushmore of singers?" And I remember I answered the question poorly because I randomly said Pentatonics, which they're great, but that's five. So there's only four spots. Um, but yeah, so what are your Mount Rushmore of of singers slash musicians?
Stephen Curtis Chapman,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bublé. Man, I love music. It's hard for me to do this. Stephen Curtis
Yes.
Chapman, Michael Bublé. Um, I would say I've got some that have Joseph Habedank is a tremendous vocalist. He's in our
Mm.
genre, and he's a dear friend. And I don't believe anybody brings an audience into an arena of worship and just his powerful testimony like he does. So I would say him. And then I would say, man, I would say Karen Peck. I'm leaving it in our genre
Okay.
because there may be some people
Okay.
that may not know these names, and so I would say Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael Bublé would be the only one that I would get away from the Christian genre because he's one of my favorite artists. And there are some others that are outside the genre of Christian music that I would say, but I want to be safe and I want to say those names. So Habedank and Karen Peck.
So if I allow honorable mentions, will you maybe open up to some of those other names?
Chris Stapleton.
Okay. All right. There you go. Yeah.
I don't endorse everything he sings or everything he does, but I think he's a generational talent. And
Yeah.
so there you go. You pried it out,
What's
Luke. You pried it out.
what's what's funny is I wholeheartedly agree because I don't I'm right here in Nashville's backyard, and I have never gotten into country music. It has just never appealed to me. I've never really, it's like it's not like I think I'm not one of these guys who says all country music is trash and it's horrible. No, I mean I've heard things here and there. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why you think that's catchy. But I Chris Stapleton is very good. Now I don't routinely like just choose to go listen to any because again it's just not my genre. But anytime like when he did the national anthem at the Super Bowl a few years
Oh,
back, I mean it's just something about his
he's
his voice and
yeah.
he's incredibly talented. So
He's generational.
yeah, no, that is a good way of putting it there. But yeah, so he's yeah, pretty good, pretty good
But
with that. So
listen,
yeah.
I promise you, Karen Peck is fantastic. She's a machine. She's done it for
Mm,
years and years and years, and she never gets full credit for her songwriting capability. She writes a lot of her songs. So please, listeners,
mm,
go look up Karen Peck and New River. The songs are
mhm.
fantastic, and she is the sweetest lady in the world, and she's an incredible vocalist. I've
Yeah.
literally never heard her miss pitch. She's always on her game every single night, night in and night out. And so listen to her. Of course, Joseph Habedank's fantastic. Everybody knows Michael Bublé's fantastic. Stephen Curtis Chapman, I think, is one of the most creative and brilliant artists of Christian music as a whole ever.
Yeah.
with his songwriting, with his production of his music. I can't name a person in Christian music, in history of Christian music, that's ever, I think, given more to Christian music than him. So.
Wow. Yeah. No, he's very good. And a name that came to mind though as you were describing Stephen Curtis Chapman there, who I feels kind of similar as Michael W. Smith.
Yes.
He has done. I went to, of course, a lot of these guys live again right here in the Nashville area. So I know Michael W. Smith does. I want to say Stephen Curtis Chapman does. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But Michael W. Smith does an annual Christmas concert right here in Nashville. And so I've been to that once, and he is a good songwriter, and he's again, no hate on him, but I mean, in terms of his voice, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it's okay, it's good, but he is a musician. Like the orchestration of that night alone was very powerful. He brought in a choir from a nearby church. He had a full orchestra. It was kind of like the first half of the concert. He just kind of sang like, little like jingle bells and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we took an intermission, and I was like, oh, is that it? And then when he came back, they brought the choir and they brought the orchestra in, and he just, man, and it just turned into a worship concert. I mean, it was powerful.
And I couldn't agree more. This is fully preferential. So major props to Michael W. Smith for absolutely having one of the greatest careers in Christian music history. I've never been just a huge fan of his voice. Full preferential. Because I know there are people that love him, but you are 100% right. There's not a better producer and composer of music in Christian music than him. His Christmas records, really all of them, are just second to none. They're fantastic. And as we're talking about this, I'm getting more names that are coming to my mind, more honorable mentions. Mark Hall of Casting Crowns, his writing is fantastic. Some of the most challenging lyrics. I think what Mark did, and really what all Casting Crowns did, there was a time in contemporary Christian music in the early 2000s where it was kind of getting a little soft and kind of getting more musically driven, and not substantial lyrics were hard to find. And here comes Casting Crowns, and they are just slapping you in the face with some really strong, substantial Christian lyrics. And so I would say that they really helped the genre at that point. Maybe one of the most important times that the genre really needed it. Here comes Casting Crowns and Mark Hall, and they did what they did. And so I major props to Dan Dean with Phillips, Craig and Dean's one of my favorite vocalists of all time, and another tremendous songwriter in his own right. So that's another honorable mention.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned lyrics, and that made me think of the Gettys. The Gettys, their lyric, of course, the Gettys are really modern hymn writers. And like we've talked about Travis Cottrell before. He just dropped an album featuring, I think it's an EP. It's featuring like 5 or 6 of the Gettys hymns.
Yeah.
Every single one, just the lyrical content, it's so doctrinally, theologically rich. It's a little different. Like what you described with Casting Crowns, like I know exactly what you're talking about. Like they kind of just say, here's the reality of life and the Christian life and how that hits you. Whereas the Gettys, it's almost like they just take straight scripture and they almost exposit a passage in the writing of their lyrics. And like in Christ Alone, the power of the cross, those are what's this Christus Victor, that's these are all on that EP. And it's kind of taken me back, because again, I grew up with a lot of that traditional choir music, and that's kind of the vibe of all the songs. So that's been really, but backing it up, if we're going to talk about Christmas, and I know the listeners out there have heard me talk about this before, but I got to share it with you, Keith, because you're a musician. One of the most gifted composers that I've heard is a guy named Tommy Prophet.
Yes.
Have you heard Tommy?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Keith. I know you're there in Texas, but if you can make it to Nashville for his Christmas concert,
oh man,
this year it is, I believe, in December 5th. I've already got tickets. I've gone the past 2 years. I will be going again. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, because this year is the first year it's going to be at Bridgestone Arena. He's gathered enough popularity. And side note, I just met. Long story short, I met Tommy Prophet about a month ago. It was that I actually crossed paths with him. It turns out we go to the same church at a church event. And I got to talk to him for 20 minutes, super down to earth guy. But anyways, sorry, just backdoor brag. I met Time Prophet. Great. But well, it's his Christmas music in particular. I mean, that's like 90% of what I listen to come
Yeah.
Christmas time. And I kind of wish, I'm like, man, I really wish I could listen to this
Yeah.
year round, but I have principles, so I don't allow myself to.
Yes, me too.
But Tommy is the reason that I will start listening to the Christmas music on November 1. I used to wait till Thanksgiving, but I will allow his stuff from November 1 to early January. His Christmas concert is like genuinely one of the best. So my wife used to be she was a talent agent. She worked in New York for years. She casted a lot of people on Broadway shows and then TV roles and things. So she's been to many Broadway shows over the years. Heard all kinds of powerful numbers. Like she's been to Wicked multiple times. So that kind of caliber of performances. She went to Tommy's concert with me this past Christmas, and she said, in all the years I've been to these shows, I've never been to something like this.
Wow.
It is something about something about the way the music, but then also he brings in very talented vocalists, and it hits. So if you can make it out here,
oh my goodness,
I'll take you to dinner.
I would love to do that. I guess really I liked a lot of his stuff that he did in Christmases prior, but this 2024 Christmas season, this record that came out this year was, I think, his best work. Just incredible, just amazing. And I'm like you, I listened to that record more than any other Christmas record this past season. It just really was incredible work. So I'm glad, and I would love to see him live. I'm sure those live concerts are incredible.
Really. And speaking of composers, I got to go see Hans Zimmer live back right before I came down with my deathly illness in February. It was before. That was so good. I mean, I've been a huge, I love in another life, I would have pursued like composing or something. I love, like, that's what another thing I like about you guys' music. You guys got some, and I think we got to shout out Chris for that. I think you've mentioned he does a lot with the background instrumentals, and he does a really good job. But I love like good movie scores, soundtracks, and so getting go see Hans Zimmer live here. The Dark Knight, Interstellar, Inception. Like, I know some of my favorite movies too. So
likewise.
But yeah. So do you do a lot of listening to? Do you listen primarily to Southern gospel, or you have a good mix?
Definitely a good mix. That's how we were raised. Dad, when we were going to church every night, he would go from Stephen Curtis Chapman to the Inspirations to Mid-South Boys to Jeff and Sherry Easter. Like, we would have so many different flavors, and we feel like that's helped diverse our style as we've been raised to so many different diverse forms of Christian music. And so we think it's healthy, and that's why I hope and pray that the listener, after they're hearing our music and even going to a concert of ours, understands that there's so many different flavors, and that's natural. And so I mean, it like I said, I'm even any day it won't be foreign for me to listen to Phillips, Craig and Dean, and I'll listen I'll listen to Primitive Quartet, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Joseph Habedank, Tommy Prophet. I mean, it jumps all over the place. And so that's kind of how we were raised.
You can definitely tell it in you guys' music, because you guys have a good, I don't know, like you're not the Southern gospel I remember listening to. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got that. It's almost like I don't know if you want to call it crossover or what you would consider it, but like it's got these elements of kind of modern worship too. Because I think a lot of people, and I know a lot of Southern gospel nowadays is kind of like blending into maybe contemporary Christian or whatever. Again, it's all just terms and labels at this point. But you guys' style is very unique. Again, I talked about a lot of the background instrumentals and stuff. It's really really good. I've really enjoyed listening to you guys' stuff ever since we connected. So you're
Well,
good.
we would never call ourselves Southern gospel artists. We never have.
Mm-hmm.
And a full disclosure, people that would are dear friends of ours. We have many people that would call themselves primarily Southern gospel artists, and we love their music. Again, like I said, we listen to so much of their music, but we've never called ourselves that. We've never kind of put ourselves into a certain box, and it has a lot to do with what I was just talking about, how our musical flavors and diversity as we were growing, as adolescents and kids, growing in so many different genres as we were, that mom and dad were exposing different artists to us and ministers to us. So, we want our music to be that way. So we've never penciled ourselves into any kind of one genre.
Yeah.
We want to be Christian music artists. We want to sing songs for the local church. Those are the two biggest things that we would say about the Erwins, and whatever else. And if anybody calls us Southern gospel artists or anything other genre, we don't correct them or anything. It's nothing like that. But we've just never called ourselves anything when it comes to one particular genre.
Sure. Okay. Well, which again, your music reflects that, and I think that's a good thing. Because to call yourself Southern gospel or even contemporary Christian or whatever, it's like, we don't want to fit into. We're not trying to fit into a box. You're trying to, like I said, glorify God and really, I mean, if anything, I would. Again, is I guess the most broad term you could say. What you guys do is powerful worship music, and whether that's in a corporate worship environment or just having a worship session while you listen to your music in your car or whatever, it's really good. Well, Keith, it's been great, chatting and talking with you. I look forward to dropping this episode and sharing it with our audience out there. Yeah. And speaking of which, any shout outs or, maybe mention how to connect with you, how to get in touch with you if anybody wants to do that.
Yeah. So our website is erwinministries.com. Our schedule's on there. We have a shop on there for different records or CDs and stuff you may want to buy. Our bios are on there if you want to know more about us. Of course, on every social media platform, the Erwins under Facebook, the Erwins under Instagram, Erwin Ministries, I believe, under X. We have of course, our podcast, the 4Ks in a Pod podcast. You can find that on all the podcast outlets. Of course, all of our music you can stream also on every streaming platform. But we would love to see all of the listeners here, everybody watching on the road. Just go on our schedule, and we'd love to see you. But again, thank you, Luke, for what you do, brother. You are the mastermind behind the 4Ks of the Pod podcast, and you produce it and everything. So thank you for everything you do and for allowing me to be on your podcast. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, it's a pleasure producing your podcast. It really is. And again, I guess I'm a little biased, but I do have to recommend check it out because, like I said, you guys are the most normal, down to earth family, and connecting with you guys in that way. I think if you want a good podcast that is some cross between like really hilarious, but also like really insightful, 4Ks in the Pod, that is for you. So check it out. Well, Keith, thanks again for being with us, and we'll have you again on next time. I hope, or another time again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for all your work that you do, but most importantly for your friendship. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, thanks.